Why? Why is it so? Is it that Indians didn't know how to make a construction in stone or in brick? Well, if you have things surviving from Harappan times, from Mehergarh, which goes back to 7000 BC, almost 9,000 years old. If you have artifacts even today, then surely theatre as it existed, you can't say there was no theatre. Why? Because it was purposely made to disappear. Do you keep a wedding mandap after the wedding is over? Anywhere in India? Once the wedding is over, it is discarded. Even yajna mandapas, they are not preserved. Now you can say, well, of course, now things are different. The 5-star hotels have their mandapas and, one party comes in and then goes out. But this, as you can see, is a great change in the philosophy. This is now the commercial attitude. That we have this one big place and people are coming, hiring it one after another. So it is much cheaper to preserve it. So this is purely a commercial attitude. Whereas the mandapa for the yajna or for natak was not commercial at all. It was actually done just as a yajna is done. Because natya was done not just to please human beings, but it was done to please the gods as well. When we'll come to the 27th chapter, which is the Siddhi Adhyaya, we'll talk about the two kinds of siddhis, Daivi and Manushi. So, getting applause, getting money, getting a lot of good reputation, or the Padma Shri of the times, was of course one purpose, but much greater purpose was to please the gods, Daivi Siddhi. And we'll talk about what was really Daivi Siddhi and how could you make out that yes, Daivi Siddhi has happened in a performance. Also, a large number of festivals were done as part of some kind of a mahotsava, and very often religious mahotsava, at a temple mahotsava, or in other situations if the state won a victory, etc., etc. And what was more important, the construction of the Rangamandapa, construction of the theatre house, was in itself an act of worship. People participated in it. People from different sections of society were made to participate in it. And it was done as a community activity, as a religious activity. It was not something you just paid. You see, the ancient cultures had a very different view of theatre. And if it was done to please gods, then it would be done in the manner in which all necessary activities for purification are done. So a site would be chosen, construction would be made, The Natyacharya would spend 10 days sleeping in there at night. He would also fast. He would perform various other activities and rituals and sanctify the place. And the town where it was being done, or the city, would constantly contribute in terms of money, in terms of labor, and they would make the theatre house. Now the theatre houses were of different kinds, different sizes. There was the square, there was the rectangular, and there was the triangular. Now, as the whole thing is largely of historical interest, I don't want to go on describing to you what it was, but the essential features were something like this. That, let us say, if there was a square, then the square area would be divided into half. It will be further divided into two areas, half of which would become what was called the green room or the Nepathya Graha. And then there would be the Ranga or the acting area. Sometimes some people think that it had two parts, one slightly higher and the other slightly lower, perhaps. And it had two doors, not in the side wings as we have now, which is the shape of a Western theatre, European theatre, but at the back. So if at the back of this building there was the Nepathya Graha, then there will be two doors. One towards the north and the other towards the south, Uttar Dwar and the Dakshina Dwar. And in between the two there would be a slight elevation called Vedika, where the musicians would sit. And in the center would be the Mardangika or the drum player. He would be, so if you look at the performance, the center, the navel, so to speak, of the area would be the drum player. To his right, there would be the veena player. And side of the veena player would be the flute player. And across them would be the singer and the singer's wife or the accompanist. And in between the drum player. Right? Now this was the setup which was essential for any performance, any kind of play, whether it was a natak like Abhigyan Shakuntalam, or a prakarana like Mritchakatikam, or a Vyayog like Madhyam Vyayog, or a Vithi, or any other action plays like Dim, Samavakar, etc. Out of the 10 kinds of plays, no matter what. This was the first condition. Why? Because the drummer set the rhythm for everybody's movement. You know, they didn't go around the stage realistically, walking like we do in ordinary life. It was a very formal walk, just as you have in lay and tal, just as you do now in a dance number, in any Bharatnatyam number. So just as you do it along with Mridanga and the Natuvangam, similarly it was done this way. He had the primary script of movement, the drummer, in his hand. The Vainik, please try to understand that in ancient India till 9th century, the Veenas were not like our Dandaveena, they were like a bow. They were like harps. So they were not this huge or this big. Now, of course, the Vainik needs a lot of space, and there is very little. I have not seen any Veena accompaniment to dance for the last, maybe I have not seen it at all, or maybe I saw it 30 years ago. There is hardly any Veena accompaniment. The instruments have changed, but at that time, this was the plucked Veena and the Murali, or the Sushiravadya, which was accompanied. So, this thing was called Kutapa. The name for this orchestra, if you please, was Kutapa. Kutam Pati iti Kutapa. This is a definition which is given. And Kuta means the rang, something which enlightens the rang. So with music, the rang or the stage comes alive. Because without music, without movement, nothing is going to happen. Now, when they talk of Vachik Abhinay, remember, then music becomes part of it. See, music in Vachik, it is not just the words, which are spoken words. It is not just the dialogue. Remember, the ancient theatre was not simply dialogue speaking. It was singing as well. And when we'll come to the 17th chapter, we'll see the detailed description of how dialogue was rendered. It was sometimes spoken, it was half spoken or enunciated, sometimes it was sung, and sometimes there was a lot of intricate singing which went on. So music was a primary part of the performance. And remember that all the compositions which were accompanied to music were in not Sanskrit, but they were in Prakrit, or the languages of the ordinary people, and people would understand them and enjoy them. There were, of course, Sanskrit verses also, as and when they were spoken by certain characters. Remember that ancient drama was not Sanskrit drama. Sanskrit was only 20-25% part of it. 75% of it was Prakrit. So it was the local languages, and not just one, but many. We'll get to know this better when we come to the 17th chapter, what were the languages, etc., and from where. So music set really the tone for any performance. And therefore, the little Vedika with the musicians was the most important part of the ancient stage. Now, under the European influence, we put the musicians to the side. We think the dancer will be obstructed by them. See, the dancer also feels that she should be the only one who should be watched. I have suggested it to many dancers, the ones I had an opportunity to talk to. I don't want to take their names because they never agreed with me, and they had no reason to disagree, but they said, no, how can, this may have happened, but now it doesn't happen. And I tried to explain it to them that it will make your performance look more beautiful. But somehow, they thought that even if it is the Guruji, he should be introduced only at the end. Now you see, there is a difference of psychology. Modernity has made us individualistic. If it is dance by XAX, then you should think only of XAX. No other name should come to your mind. And you should not see somebody else also as much. This is modern individualism. This is a very colonial actually attitude that Indians have acquired. The ancient stage put the drummer and the musicians, they would be constantly there. The actors, the performers would come and go, but the drummer would be there all the time, and the musicians would be there all the time, and they would be seen. Constantly they would be seen. In fact, in Purvarang, they would be seen first. When I come to the 5th chapter and talk about Purvarang, they are there in the Purvarang. They enter the stage first of all, and they leave it last. So the Nata shared the stage with the musician. You see, these things, when you actually see something happening, then they have a different psychological effect on you. Then music becomes important in a different way. Now with the blessings of modern technology, dancers have musicians in their pocket. You know, earlier you had to carry a cassette, a big roll. That 35 years ago it was that spool, big spool tape, if you wanted to play taped music. Then it became a cassette, and now it is a flash drive. You just put it here and you can go to United States, do your 3 months of tour, just plug it in and the music comes up and you do your dancing and you come back. All the money is yours. You have paid the musicians. Now, you would say this is practical. Of course it is practical, and I am not saying it should not be done. But what it has done, it has created a crisis. Not only for the musicians, but it has transformed the art form. The artist today is spending a lot of money on backdrop. All kinds of new technology has come in. Electrical effects and color effects and projections and images. Dance is becoming increasingly a combination of cinema and dance. And somewhere this human body of yours, this pinda, this angik Brahma, is getting diluted, dissolved. Many other kinds of aharya, many other kinds of instrumentation has come in. So that changes the aesthetic, and it also changes the skill of the performer. So much for theatre. Now there were certain other features for theatre. The theatre house, it had the Vedika, the musician, and I have elaborated on the great significance of the musician to you. Then there was on the stage something which, though is not very crucial, but you should know about it. It is called the Mattavarani. And I don't know, I hope you are excused from some sort of an exam on these aspects. But in discussions, if somebody asks you what is a Mattavarani in an ancient stage, then it was one of the things about which people have all kinds of opinions. In my opinion, it was an area on both sides of the stage which had 4 columns, pillars, And it was a kind of an elaboration to make the matta in classical Sanskrit means what in modern English means like deluxe. We have a room and we have a deluxe room, which is plush and fine. So a stage which was highly elaborate had this matta varani. Maybe later on, if I have time, I can show you some slides, because this is more of an architectural column. We don't really know how it was used theatrically. There are some guesses that we can make, that maybe the actor went into it, or maybe that some very special people came and sat in it. But this much is the function of the stage. And then, like the modern stage, the audience was seated on a step. So the ancient Indian stage had some very important shared feature with the modern European stage in terms of the seating, that it had sopan or elevated seating. But as I explained to you, there was a big difference in its treatment of music. You see, every culture creates a theater according to the aesthetics it wants you to appreciate and it wants to create. Now, as I said, that today the musicians have been shoved into the right side wing. Right? They are no longer in the center. Because in ancient theater, music played a very vital role, and as I said, the drummer controlled the performance by setting the rhythm for every movement. Therefore, the drummer was constantly there. I mean, you would see that drummer more than you would see the great dancer Yamini Krishnamurti or whoever it is, because he would be constantly controlling everybody on the stage. So this is the difference of aesthetics in terms of music. Those cultures which